welcome to this module, which is all about goal setting. The module that you're about to go through is taking you through a 6-step process to create what we call well-formed outcomes. The outcomes that we create often in life are actually not particularly well-formed. We create a goal for something, for example, a New Year's resolution, and then it fades and it disappears. And there are an awful lot of goals that we set in our lives that actually we're not quite as committed to as we should be. The goals aren't particularly well-formed, and we set ourselves up to fail by not having something that stands a particularly good chance of succeeding. The benefit of creating a well-formed outcome is that we increase the likelihood of success by checking through 6 very clear steps as we set that goal. And if we can set those goals so that there is a better chance of success, it's far more worthwhile to create the goal in the first place. So let me take you through the 6 steps that we're going to go through. So the model that I'm going to take you through to create these well-formed outcomes is known as the PECSAW model. Obviously everything in training needs to have some sort of acronym. They can get rather irritating from time to time, but actually they're a really good way of just making sure that things stick in your mind and that you get things in the right order as you run through. So I'm going to take you through each of the 6 elements of the PECSAW model and explain to you what they are and, most importantly, what they're there for and why they're important. The first one of these is the P, which stands for positive. It's fundamental when you set any sort of goal to set it in a positive way, to frame it in a positive way. A lot of the goals that we create in life, both in our personal life and our work life, are actually framed negatively when we think about them. Think about the New Year's resolutions that you've made. A lot of New Year's resolutions are about giving up something. I'm going to give up drinking during the week. I'm going to give up eating donuts every Thursday. I'm going to give up something or lose something, like losing weight. The problem with that is you create a connotation that means you've actually got to think about the negative aspect of what you're doing before you get around to thinking about the positive thing. Stephen Covey talks about this a lot when he talks about the idea of how you would instruct a child to be careful carrying a glass of milk across a floor. He frames it in that way, telling the child to be careful so that the focus and the attention that is paid is about taking care. The alternative, and it's the more common alternative that we hear very frequently, is actually don't spill the milk. And if you think about that, you've got to create an image of spilling milk and the consequences of spilling milk, rather than actually focusing on carrying something carefully. When we create a goal, we need to ensure that we're focused on the outcome that we want, not on the thing that we want to avoid. And therefore, we try and create a goal that is framed positively. The second aspect is to look at the evidence. How are we going to know when we've got there? Saying that you're going to get fit, for example, as a goal, is not a particularly evidential-based goal, because how do you know when you are fit? Because it's a grey scale. There are lots of points along the line of that particular scale. You need to have something that is measurable, and in business we often talk about SMART goals, things that are specific and measurable. Everything needs to be measurable if we're going to create a well-formed outcome, because otherwise we'll never know when we've got there. We'll never know when it's time to move on to the next thing. So ensure that your goal is both framed positively and that you have very clear success measures so that you know where you've got to. You'll know when you've reached the destination. The third aspect is to look at the context in which we are going to undertake this activity. If, for example, we've got a goal to become better at public speaking, where is that going to take place? What is the context going to be? Are we going to talk about public speaking in front of 5,000 people in an enormous auditorium? Or are we actually talking about being able to present better in a small group of people around a board table? Are we talking about presentations that are one-on-one in a sales environment? Are we talking about face-to-face presentations? Or are we talking about our ability to present ourselves over the phone? The more specific we can be about the context in which we are going to achieve this goal, the more specific the goal becomes. And again, like with all of the other measures in this, it enables us to increase our chances of succeeding. The fourth element is to look at whether it's self-achievable. This is absolutely critical. One of the issues with a lot of goals that are created is that they are actually reliant on behaviour and activity from people other than us. And if they're reliant on behaviour and activity from people other than us, we have a get-out clause in the goals that we set. The get out clause is that we can blame somebody else. If we create a goal that is not self-achievable, we always have that opportunity to say, well, it wasn't my fault. I wasn't responsible for it. I would have done it, but. And as soon as the goal starts to be created in that way, we have an inbuilt get out clause, and it undermines the strength of the well-formed outcome that we thought we were creating in the first place. Make sure when you set your goal that there isn't that get out clause in there, that you can take 100% responsibility for the goal that you're setting, and you don't have an easy way out. The next one, although it's an A, actually stands for two words. It stands for advantages and disadvantages. Every goal that you set, particularly challenging goals, are going to have both of these. There will be positive and negative consequences of it. Taking a look at personal goals, the sort of thing I'm talking about here is, let's say I set myself a goal to become fit. And I've created the evidence of that, which might be a particular time for a marathon, or my ability to throw something a certain distance, or whatever that happens to be. So I've got that right, and I know what the context is. The context might be the London Marathon in 2016. The context might be a particular sports competition that I'm going to enter. That's all fantastic. I then need to make sure that it's self-achievable, so I can't blame somebody else for the fact that I don't have the time available to go and practice these things, that I set that aside. But then I need to look at the advantages and the disadvantages, the pros and the cons of doing something. There are lots of benefits to that sort of stuff. There are benefits in terms of other aspects of my life that I will be able to do better if I increase my level of fitness to that level. But there are also disadvantages. What am I going to have to give up in order to be able to achieve this goal? Any goal that is of any power at all means that you are going to have to give up other things in order to be able to achieve the thing that you want to achieve. And we need to be really clear about what those disadvantages are. My favourite story about this, which is actually a relatively unpleasant story, is about a couple, one of whom decided that they were going to give up smoking. This was a negative goal, so it was reframed in a positive way. They were going to become a non-smoker. They went through all of this process and they looked at the advantages of doing this. There were a huge number of advantages, health advantages, social advantages of doing it. But the step was missed looking at the disadvantages. And what they realised is, because their partner smoked, they actually spent an awful lot less time with their partner as a result of having given up smoking, and they lost a lot of the quality time that these two individuals had together. That had a profound impact on their relationship, and they had to work on that as well afterwards. Any goal that we have will require us to give up certain things. And if we're going to give things up, we need to be upfront about those bits that we're going to give up and make sure that we're okay with the disadvantages of the decision that we've taken. The very final part of what we're going to do is check that it's worthwhile. We've done an awful lot of work on this well-formed outcome. We've created something that is positive. We've framed it in a positive way so that we know what we are trying to achieve, not what we're trying to avoid. We've done a lot of work to understand how we're going to measure our performance and gather the evidence that proves that we have hit this well-formed outcome. We've made sure that we understand the context. We've done a list of when we are going to undertake this sort of activity and when we aren't. When we are going to be showing this new skill and showing the achievement of this new goal and when we're not. We've done our lists, the advantages on one side, the disadvantages on the other side. And we've made sure that the balance is right and we're okay about the things that we're going to give up if we're going to achieve this goal. Once we've done all that, this final check is it worthwhile? Is it worthwhile to put all of this effort in to achieve the goal that we have set? Because if we can't convince ourselves that it's a worthwhile exercise to go through all of this activity to achieve what we want to achieve, don't set it as a goal in the first place. If you go through and you set up a series of goals that you consistently fail at because they are not well-formed outcomes, and because you don't have the commitment behind achieving those outcomes, you will be on a negative spiral. And that negative spiral will reduce your interest in setting more challenging goals, growing yourself, growing your business, growing your organisation, growing the people around you. If you set a well-formed outcome, you stand a far better chance of success, and you can actually create a positive spiral where the next goal becomes easier, as does the one after that, and as does the one after that. So, thank you for listening to this short presentation about the PECSAW model, the goal-setting model that creates well-formed outcomes. What I'd really like you to do now is log on to the TD Academy, Go and download a PDF document that will be available for you with a very clear layout of the PECSAW model with space for you to start to form your own well-formed outcomes. Have great success with achieving those outcomes, enjoy the process and get yourself onto that positive spiral where every goal that you set becomes easier every time that you do it.